This is the second video on how to complete an EJM costing sheet, part of Bake 153 and a few other Bake courses. You'll notice here in front of it we have a recipe for Quiche Lorraine. This is a recipe that you're not given to complete, so you'll see that some of the, not the ingredients necessarily, but the quantities that are right here are all very nice and even and round. It's not the numbers that are important, it's just the process. So today we're going to talk about three different things. We're going to talk about the additional recipe. We're going to talk about troubleshooting some mistakes that can happen when you use this sheet. And the last thing I want to emphasize why this is a fantastic system to actually use. So first of all, let's do the additional recipe. So on this Quiche Lorraine here, you'll see that all the blue cells have been completed and everything's working wonderfully well. We also have the yield portion over here, which is programmed in. And as you scroll down, you'll see that all the numbers are filled in, including the 2 at the bottom here. So under the additional recipe, we have actually written Shortcrust Pastry because you will use the Shortcrust Pastry for multiple types of pies and quiches. So it's very smart to have a separate recipe just for that. So let's move over and see this recipe. This is the Shortcrust Pastry recipe, and believe it or not, it's actually the one taken from the exercise that you have to do. And here you'll notice you have the pastry flour, sugar, and the butter, and all the blue cells have populated. But then you have 2 issues, which the NA is showing on here means it can't understand it. There's something wrong. It's not able to take the numbers and populate them for you. So don't worry about the formulas. The formulas are always going to work. So we scroll down and we realize we cannot get any totals from this whatsoever. So we have to fix this recipe. You cannot submit a recipe when you have NA over in this column. So first of all, there's the two offenders. The first one is cold water. Well, cold water is free. And because it's free, it's a waste of time putting it into your costing sheet in the first place. So what I recommend we do is we come here and we just delete it from the costing sheet altogether. So it hasn't resolved the complete issue, but it's gotten rid of the cold water one. The next one is egg yolks. Now, that looks perfectly normal to me. I don't understand why it's not taking any numbers. So when you start your troubleshooting, first thing to do is go into ingredients and we look up the egg yolks themselves. So here we have eggs, egg yolks, and egg whites. There's nothing wrong with actually using the eggs if you wanted to, but because you have the egg yolk, let's use that one. But here you'll notice that egg and yolk, first of all, they both use capital letters, and secondly, it is singular. So whatever's written here, you have to use that in your actual costing sheet. So let's click on egg yolk. We come up here to change it. So the first thing, let's just see what happens if we get rid of the S. So we back it up, get rid of the S, and then see what happens. There you go. That was all we had to do. So it can be the simplest thing that will prevent you from getting a completed costing sheet. And it may just be the letter S. If that's all it is, then remove the S. And as you'll see now, as you scroll down, this recipe is now completed. You have the cost for the recipe, which comes down here as a total. You then have the number of portions because this recipe gives you 600 grams. It gives you enough for 2 pie shells. And this is the price of 1 pie shell. So now we need to take this number, the price of 1 pie shell, and put it into the first recipe, which of course is the quiche itself. So there are 2 ways of doing this. So let me just show you the mouse way of doing it, where you left click on this to highlight it, and then you right click on it, and we copy. So there's the copy. We then move over to the first recipe. Down here where it says Shortcrust Pastry, column 36, there's no reason whatsoever to put anything in here. You don't need to use that. It's kept white for a reason. So when you get over here, you now right click on this cell and you're given these different paste options. Now, this one is a wonderful one because it's general. I'll show you that one in a second. This is just numbers. This is just a formula when you don't want the actual number from that file. But here we want to link it. So we come to the last one here, which has an infinity sign, and it says paste link, and we click that. And now you can see the number has shown up, $1.44. So it's very important to either link it, or in this case, if we know what that cell number is, and that cell number is AB41, we can actually come back here. This is the other way of doing it. Instead of doing the link, you can actually type in plus AB41, and we hit enter. Both these ways work very, very well. And the next section I want to emphasize to you is the fact that by linking it this way, I mean, you could just write that number in, but if you link it, then this is what is going to happen. So let's look at the total down here. It's 91 cents. This is $1.44, and that's 91 cents. If we were to go to the pastry recipe and we look up at the top, we're going to change the price of the pastry flour. So here the pastry flour is $21.78 for a 20 kilo bag, which gives us 42 cents. So we come into the ingredients and we decide we're going to change the price. Did I go too far? Where's my pastry flour? There it is. So pastry flour here is $21.78. So to make it more evident, I'm just going to be quite outrageous and write $350. So that wouldn't happen, but it's just to emphasize the point. So we hit enter, and now we go to the costing sheet here. And first of all, you'll notice that the price of the pastry flour is now $350, which means the cost for this particular recipe is now $6.70, which comes down here to $4.58 per pie, per shell. And that's now taken the recipe for the quiche, given it the new recipe because of the increased price of the actual flour. And now your cost is no longer 91 cents, it's $1.43. So that's why if you have hundreds or thousands of recipes and the price of flour goes up by $1 a bag, when you change the price in the inventory, it will automatically change the price in every single recipe that you have linked to that inventory. And that's why this is a fantastic system. If you can spend the time to do each recipe, that'll be great. So the next thing is your actual selling price. So here we have $1.43. It's not really important what your cost is because it's more the math that we're talking about here. And the portion cost here is 25%. So the 25% is usually decided by the owner, the manager, or the person who runs the operation. And for a bake shop, 25% is deemed to be a very admirable cost, because you're going to do 25% for the actual food itself, you're going to do 25% for your labor, 25% for overheads, and then 25% for profit. So that's a very simplistic way of doing it. But maybe you realize that, hey, this quiche, $5.72, I mean, that price is elevated because of the price of the flour. But if you thought there's no way we could sell it for this price, then we take this food cost and we up it to 36%. And this is now $3.97. So the higher the food cost, the less profit you're going to make, but the lower the selling price is going to be. So here, by changing the food cost percentage, you can change the selling price of the actual item itself. And here you can see how it works. If you wanted to make even more profit, instead of 36 or 25, you could do 15%. And if you do 15%, you're going to have to sell it for $9.54, but you're going to make a lot more profit. So I've now covered pretty much everything I can think of for the costing sheets. So enjoy using this file.